Good afternoon. Thank you so much for joining us today for our STG at Home monthly event. Today, our conversation will feature Lauren Reid, Chief Operating Officer of the John Gore Organization, interviewed by Seattle Theater Group's Executive Director, Josh LaBelle. STG at Home is a series of discussions about the arts hosted exclusively for our most actively engaged patrons in an effort to just keep you apprised of what's going on at STG while our theaters are dark and to keep you inspired by the arts. Thank you so much for your incredible support. Access is very important to STG, and we are striving to make these conversations as accessible as possible. We have closed captioning available, which can be easily enabled by hitting this CC button on the bottom of your screen. You're going to notice that we are going to give a brief description of our appearance as well, which is an effort to improve the experience for patrons who are blind or with low vision. My name is Victoria Weimer-Contreras. I go by Tori. I'm the Director of Sales and Patron Services at the Seattle Theater Group. My pronouns are she, her. I have long dark brown hair, white skin, and I'm wearing a Kelly green jacket. As you likely saw before you entered the Zoom meeting, we are recording these events and may end up sharing the recording with the public in the future. Our plan is to keep this conversation at 60 minutes. If you submitted a question prior to this event, it will be addressed during the first 45 minutes of this event. We will save time at the end to answer live questions, which will be read by Ann Francis, BAA's Vice President of the West Coast. To submit a question, please use the Q&A box below. Please use this rather than the comment box. I want to note that we will not be able to provide specific updates about our 2020-2021 Broadway season today. We're working on those details, and I think after the conversation today, you'll get a better sense of everything that goes into making changes to touring Broadway performances. But you have my word that you're going to get the changes as soon as things have been finalized. You'll be the first to hear. I'm expecting a very rich conversation today with you as our audience and with our incredible speakers. At this time, it is my pleasure to introduce to you Lauren Reid, Chief Operating Officer of the John Gore Organization, and Josh LaBelle, STG's Executive Director.
Hi, everybody.
Hi there.
Hi, Lauren. It's good to see you. My name is Josh LaBelle. As Tori referenced, I'm the Executive Director of Seattle Theater Group. I have light white skin with short brown balding hair. I'm wearing glasses, and most important, I'm wearing a blue shirt with pineapples on it. Lauren, you want to describe yourself, and then we'll dig right in?
I'd be happy to. My name is Lauren Reid. I have, I'll call it blondish hair during this pandemic. I have light, pale white skin. I am wearing a blue jacket, and I use she, her.
Well, all right. Lauren, I also want to recognize that one of our favorite people and colleagues, Ann Francis, is with us. Ann runs the West Coast office and offices in the Paramount Theater, and you're going to hear more from Ann a little bit later, but I just wanted to straight up just recognize and thank Ann for participating. I want to thank you too, and I want to explain to everybody that's joining us that Lauren and Ann are theater family as far as STG is concerned, as you all are as well. But golly, Lauren and I have been working together for a few too many years, longer than perhaps I care to remember. I will say, at the risk of embarrassing you, Lauren, that there's fewer people that I enjoy working with than you. I've learned so much over the years, and it's been a pleasure to grow our businesses together. And specifically, Tori was referencing the John Gore Organization that Lauren is COO of. And that is the umbrella organization to Broadway Across America, which is a very dynamic company that she runs that I want to focus our conversation around. So with that, Lauren, can you please give a bit of an overview of Broadway Across America and your role there, just to start us off?
Sure, I'd be happy to. First, I want to acknowledge you and our partnership. We we have known each other and worked together. I'm going to just admit it because I'm proud of it. For I think more than 25 years, I was certainly around for the reopening of the Paramount, and I've been a part of that great organization and a partner with you guys since that time. The John Gore Organization is the largest developer, producer, and promoter of Broadway theater worldwide. We have a couple of family of companies, Broadway.com, which is a preeminent, I'll call it editorial group within our company, also happens to sell tickets, and then Broadway Across America, which is our theater. We focus purely on theater. We produce touring theater, we produce shows and invest in shows in New York. We operate theaters, both new and historic, similar to the Paramount across the country. And we sell season subscriptions throughout the North America in 47 cities, just like in Seattle at the Paramount.
Terrific. Lauren, let's go back to March. Really not all that long ago, but in some ways it feels like an eternity. So much has changed in our world. Can you talk about the immediate impact of COVID, of the shutdown on Broadway Across America touring and Broadway in New York City?
Sure, I can go back to March 12th. I remember that date well. I probably always will. I was sitting in the boardroom of the Broadway League, and the Broadway League is to our industry like the NBA is to basketball. It's the trade organization of our industry. And I was sitting around the boardroom table on Broadway in Times Square, discussing with producers who had shows on Broadway running and about to open, and also the theater owners who operate and run the venues, and talking about what was going on and what we were seeing. And in constant communication with our local and state governor officials. And we made the decision, I recall, I think it was at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, that in the interest of health and safety of our patrons, our colleagues, our actors, our employees, that we were gonna close the shows that day. And everybody left that boardroom and went back to the 30, 40 some odd theaters to tell their cast who were arriving at the show at the theater that night to perform at 7 o'clock that night. At 5 o'clock, we told them there's not going to be a show. And all of the theaters went dark that day. I don't think any of us believed at that time that we would be talking about this 6 months later and still closed down. Throughout our industry, I think whatever crisis, Broadway theaters have always been open. And so this is the longest period of time that theaters have been closed. So with that, I think you can imagine the impact of all of those connected with Broadway, the livelihoods that have been impacted, and the vendors, our coworkers, all of them lost their jobs and are waiting for us to find a way to reopen.
It's really interesting. You know, you reference that this has been the longest we've been closed as a sector. I remember Seattle being one of the first cities to close down, if I'm correct. And I found myself on quite a few phone calls with colleagues from the league. And I remember getting a question. Someone asked, like, well, do you have a longer business plan here? Like, how long do you think you might be closed? And I answered it. We've got a plan that hopefully keeps us healthy and moving forward through the end of 2020, the calendar year 2020. And I remember hearing some like gasps on the line. And then I got a few emails from folks saying, like, oh, that, you know, no way, can't be. And I also didn't believe it can't be, but it just so happened that that's where our board had pointed us, thinking a little bit more towards the long term. I'm thankful for that. let's move over to the economic impact. And let's get you to share the economic impact on touring, and specifically Broadway at the Paramount, if you want to comment on any statistics here for our patrons.
Well, I would just share that, Broadway, we like to say, even in New York, Broadway is the longest road in America. It has a tremendous economic engine. It's not just in New York. It contributes $18.5 billion to the US economy, and it employs hundreds of thousands of workers across the country. And I think, 18.5 million people toured Broadway shows across North America. And that was, I think, in the 18-19 season, the last time we actually took those records. And so I'm not sure exactly the economic input for you per se in Seattle. You could probably speak to that, but I know for a fact that the Broadway tours and the businesses support the local restaurants, the garages, the shops, all the local businesses around that theater. And that income that you at the Paramount enjoy and your patrons so generously give supports art installations and ballets and opera and a lot of the community educational and outreach programs that you put out there and others just like you around the country. So it's vital, it's important, and it's a huge hole now that we're missing.
Lauren, do you remember what there's a multiplier that the league uses to figure out the economic impact? Is it by 3, something like that?
I think it's just a little under 3. I think it is. Maybe if Anne is here, she can slack me that number. But yeah, I think it is very close to that, Josh.
So if it's around 3, I could share with our patrons that Broadway-wise, we've moved about 5.5 weeks so far. We've rescheduled 5.6 weeks, and about 7 weeks have canceled. But if we just looked at, I'm going to say the economic impact is going to be around $18 million just on the Broadway series so far in our region, which is huge, especially for our workers and families, and yes, the artists that are on tour. It's a big deal.
Yeah, Josh, you're right, and we've been able to redate, postpone about 5 weeks in Seattle. You're right, and cancel about 7 weeks, either because shows have closed or we had to trim an extra week off in order to accommodate other cities on the tours. Overall, for our cities in the 47 cities so far, we have actually postponed over 300 weeks, which is about 2,500 performances. And we have had to cancel over 90 weeks. So another over 720 performances to date. And that's just in our 47 cities. There are 80 cities across the country that promote kind of 1 week or more subscription shows. And then if you add in the smaller venues, it adds up to 200 venues overall. So it's wow. Pretty, yeah.
Can you give our patrons a little insight into how in the world does Broadway Across America go about rescheduling, more than 300 weeks of theater? Can you just describe a little bit of that juggling? How many people is this taking? What goes into all of that?
Yeah, you know what, and it's complicated even in pre-COVID, right? Pre-pandemic. There are a lot of logistics, and we liken it to being an air traffic controller almost. There are as many as 40 different tours traveling around the country in any given season. And like I said, over maybe 200 cities. And so it's a puzzle that you have to put together with all of the pieces based on availability of the theater, based on kind of the geography of the traveling. You clearly want to make kind of geographical sense traveling west to east. And so in Seattle, we might start frozen like you had and then move on to Portland and so on. You can't really make what we call a jump from Seattle to Texas and make a performance schedule of a Tuesday to Sunday, week to week to week. So all of that takes about, it takes us 2 to 3 years of kind of planning ahead under normal circumstances. And now we are juggling all of these changes and having to not just address those typical kind of geography, calendar availability, creative team availability, but also where is this tour where is it able to start? Where are the sets right now being stored? Many of these shows that I said were shuttered were in different theaters around the country. For instance, I think we played all of our dates, all of our performances of Frozen in Seattle. That was right when the pandemic was kind of beginning. We were noticing, and you're right, we were calling you because you were on the front end of it in Seattle. All of you were. And we were able to load out Frozen, and Frozen, the cast and crew were able to move on to Portland and load it in. And we had a few performances, and then we had to close before we got all of the performances played. Well, secret here, those sets and costumes are still in the Keller Auditorium in Portland, right? So right now, and that is true for a number of shows. So right now, we've got to figure out where the shows are, where we can start them, and they've got to get the cast and crews rehearsed, remounted, and rescheduled all of those. It's complicated, right?
Yes, absolutely.
Let me just add in that we're now also managing the health and safety factors in every single municipality. So all of the regulations are different. So we've got to really monitor when cities and states and theaters can and can't reopen, and plan for that as best we can.
So a little bit deeper on this for our patrons to understand, because I think we've received this question pretty frequently from patrons. Can a Broadway show go on tour and play reduced capacity houses? Essentially, if the Paramount holds 3,000 people, could it possibly work if we could only put 1,500 people in there, or even 1,000?
It's a really fair question. The very nature of Broadway shows doesn't really allow for social distancing, because when you think about it, our backstage area are filled with the cast and crews, right? And so just trying to sort that out is already difficult. Let's imagine that we could. We also have the great subscribers that we need to address and make sure that we have seats in order to accommodate all of those season ticket holders, which in many cases we wouldn't if we were social distancing. And I think really importantly, and not to overlook, is the relationship the cast has with the audience, and that the audience has back with the cast during a performance. And that kind of energy that feeds off of all of that, I think, is vital. Something would be missing if we were to social distance, if we even could. And I think the final kind of layer that makes it impossible is just the financial model depends upon having that 3,000 seat capacity in your case. These shows are large, they are expensive, and many of them don't even break even until we even have 75% sold. So the very financial model and economics that it was all built off of just doesn't work. So we're gonna wait until we can have full audiences and full houses again.
Perfect. I hope people understand that. And I would just add that I feel that that is largely the case for most of the other touring performing arts that our patrons may see at the Paramount. Some possibly comedy could do something that's more reduced capacity, but I think there'll be very, very few things that can tour with reduced capacity. And by the way, we've sent this message loud and clear to the government authorities like the governor's office and Dow Constantine, our county executive, whom, by the way, I feel like they're doing a really solid job of staying in touch with us all. And more on that down the road when we get to some advocacy stuff. But let me stay on track with more patron questions. Want to talk about confidence level of getting things back moving in the spring of 2021. We clearly have shows on the books. People have joined us today, have tickets to some of these shows. How are you feeling about the likelihood of these shows being able to play?
Listen, I mean, I feel as good as anybody can that the shows that we have scheduled right now will happen as long as it's safe for us to bring them and the government has allowed us to open. If for some reason that changes, and we've already seen it change before, and thank you all, especially ticket buyers, for rolling with us through this. But if we see that change, we'll shift again and we will communicate it clearly and quickly to our audiences. And but right now I feel good about it. But we're not gonna jump ahead of the medical experts or the science or our government officials.
I am 100% in agreement with you there.
Yeah.
And you know, before I was kind of thinking, golly, you know, getting word about a vaccine, you know, becoming available, and if it gets largely distributed and it's working well, perhaps there's not huge requirements in terms of the sort of safety precautions we have to provide. I'm feeling, and I know, a lot of the BA markets like Seattle Theater Group, we're making plans already in terms of still, regardless of the situation, being able to provide support and safety measures for patrons to come into the theater. What do you anticipate, largely in our country, likely folks needing to prepare themselves to experience?
Well,
Do you follow? I'm not sure I asked that question
totally
all that well.
because I think we're living this right now. We were working so hard day and night on new safety protocols, health guidelines. I think what we can expect and our audiences can expect, and we will clearly communicate this venue to venue. I know you will work on, we've been talking about communication plans, but upgraded air filtration systems, increased sanitizing of high touch areas throughout the venue and the frequency of that. New initiatives in ticketing and concessions that might provide a touchless experience. Wearing masks in the venues. And we're closely, you know, maybe closely following the kind of the advances of rapid testing. And that could be a solution for us all to come together and gather again at full capacity.
Yep. I wanted to add to that, make sure, just to share with patrons that I've learned that our county, King County, where our theaters are located in, King County has the legal capacity and ability to enforce more stringent guidelines than the state. So they will, of course, adopt whatever guidelines the state calls for, and we at STG are paying close attention and staying in touch with the county because they could require stricter things for our county than the state is requiring around the state. So I want to make patrons aware of that. Some of you wind up moving around the state, seeing shows elsewhere, and you may experience different levels, different experiences from county to county. my hunch is King County is going to be pretty darn conservative, and I, for one, am thankful for that. So, Lauren, what do you think patrons can do right now to help? What's your sense?
Well, first, I want to just say thank you to them for sticking with us, right? I mean, I think it's been, we've had an incredible relationship, and we are grateful for the loyalty that's already been shown. I would ask that they continue to support their venues and their favorite arts groups, and especially the Paramount Theater. Please keep your seats for your season, for your Broadway season. We will be bringing you great shows, and we have a patron promise that if anything changes or something comes up, the value of your tickets is safe at the Paramount. So I want to drive that home. So support the Paramount, and because it does provide great community outreach programs, and Broadway is essential to that. And then if you want to get a little bit further into it and want to call your local congressmen or senators, there are some great bills out there. We are big advocates for SOS, Save Our Stages. It will help our industries, our independent venue operators stay alive and afford grants to so many small and large operators who employ, again, those hundreds of thousands of people in our sector. So I think that those are my three kind of pieces of advice. I think there's another one called Restart as well, Josh, that we're fans of, that are really, I think, will be helpful for our industry.
Yep. I would add to this that at some point, I would hope the Washington State Legislature winds up convening, and I would encourage patrons to get in touch with your state representatives and remind them the importance of providing support to the arts and cultural sector, both nonprofit and for-profit, frankly. So far, our state has not been able to find any dollars to directly support arts and culture. The state of Oregon, Little Oregon, may I just say it again, Oregon found $50 million for their arts and cultural sector, which is terrific. And our sector is much larger and deserves, let's say, a congruent amount of support. So it's really critical. We are going to be experiencing the longest shutdown than most sectors, I believe. And at some point here, our state and hopefully our federal government will recognize this and realize the importance that we play, not just in the cultural life of citizens like you who've joined us, but in the economic life. I also want to just point out that Senator Patty Murray has come on board as a sponsor of the Restart Act, which is terrific. And she's also indicated her support of SOS if indeed SOS winds up coming on board. So as well as Senator Maria Cantwell. So I'm very appreciative of both of these legislators.
And Josh,
okay.
I just add on those. I think those are both bipartisan bills, right? They're being supported.
Yes.
By,
Absolutely, they're bipartisan bills. Yeah, which is terrific. So yeah. We're hopeful here. I do want to share with patrons that at some point, pretty early on, forgetting what this bill was called, Lauren, Seattle Theater Group received approximately $2.9 million of revenue via the federal government. Do you remember what that first program was called?
I don't.
I don't either, but it was so appreciated. And it was initially set up like a loan, but it's largely turned into a grant for us, which has been hugely helpful, enabling us to keep people employed as long as we possibly could. By the way, we had 210 people employed through July 15th. Today, we still have about 50 people employed. So we're doing our very, very best to keep people first, because God knows our industry is reliant on three things: people, the venues itself, and you all, patrons. So it's a puzzle. We're taking care of our venues. We're doing our best to take care of people. And we're going to do our best to take care of you as business starts returning. So, you know, COVID's not the only crisis that's been happening, Lauren. Clearly, Black Lives Matter, and many organizations in our sector are working hard at, you know, improving our racial equity initiatives. Do you care to share anything around what Broadway Across America is doing around these issues?
Sure, I'd be happy to. I mean, no question that this has given this moment in time has given us even more time to reflect and be introspective. And for us at Broadway Across America, although we haven't made any formal announcements, I will share with you that we really want to develop a pipeline of new talent and new faces and new voices. And to that end, we want to create a long-term plan and program. And what we are developing now is a paid internship program to introduce students to our industry and every facet of the industry, not just the people on the stage, but the people that are behind the scenes. And the fact that there are job opportunities in almost every facet of any industry, in the Broadway industry as well. And so across all of our offices regionally, we are going to add a position, a paid internship position, to develop this new talent and create, I hope, opportunities and even just awareness of what is available. And so again, we're working very closely with a group called Black Theater United that will help us, I hope, execute it. Again, we're in the very early stages of development, but it will be a multi-year program that we will launch as soon as things are back. We're back in our offices. Very exciting. You know, it's like good that comes from all of this, right? And that's one of the things I really look at.
This is happening, I think, across Broadway Across America's network, which yes, we're a part of. A lot of partners like Seattle Theater Group are doing our utmost to take time and reset the organization and look hard at our history and realizing where we could do a better job of being inclusive on an EDI basis, an equity, diversity, inclusion, and accessibility basis. And I want our patrons to know that STG is also involved in a similar process right now amongst our management, our board, and our staff. And in fact, tomorrow we're kicking off what we're calling a series of reset meetings that will help us adjust our strategic plan. And so it's hard work for us, and it's also really exciting work. I have a lot of hopes, and I'll also say our staff is really proud of a lot of the work that we've been doing throughout the years in these zones, such as, you know, Ailey Camp. So there's going to be much more to share in the months ahead. And certainly, I have every expectation that in the seasons ahead, the theatrical industry in and of itself will be better, will be more inclusive. There will be more different stories on our stages. So I share this hope with you as well. And good will come out of this. It must. We have to make that commitment. So, Lauren, I don't know if we're getting to the point that we should check in with our patrons. I've been every now and then seeing a bunch of different questions flying around down low, but I've been trying to also pay good attention to you. I think Anne Francis has just joined us.
Anne.
Welcome, Anne.
Hi, everybody. Thank you. Thank you guys so much. This has been such an amazing conversation. I feel like even though I've been in this industry since 1993, that I've learned a little bit today. So this has really been great. We really thank you for taking the time. My name is Anne Francis. I'm the Vice President for Broadway Across America's West Coast office. As Josh mentioned earlier, we are privileged to office out of the Paramount Theater Towers, and we really work closely with STG staff on the Seattle Broadway series. We also work on the Broadway series in Portland, Fresno, and Costa Mesa from our office. I have brown hair, white skin. I'm wearing a black top with gray and pink flowers, and I use she and her pronouns. So yes, we've had a few questions that are really great that I can't wait to ask you. Some of them you actually have already answered, so I won't necessarily go to those, but first things first is what's happening at STG's theaters while the stages are dark to continue to provide community benefit and keep audiences engaged?
Well, I can take.
Or to Josh.
Yeah, I could take that. So in addition to racial equity work that we've embarked on, our education and community programs have largely moved online. And so we've got programs such as Dance for Parkinson's, Ailey Camp, Northwest Inclusion. So many of these things have moved online, and the response has been pretty terrific. And I'd even say that some of this may have an online component once we reopen and we're able to offer these programs both in person and then also provide an online component. So that may be another one. We've been dealing with a lot of deferred maintenance, if you can imagine, at all three theaters. So when the theaters open back up, they will be bright and shiny and beautiful. There'll be some key changes. Pretty happy. There's been a fair amount of work done to make our theaters more accessible physically for people with some physical challenges. So I'm happy about that.
That's a great. We actually had a question that somebody was asking how we're also reaching out to other traditionally marginalized groups, such as persons with disabilities. And so that's a great segue into answering that question for our patrons.
For sure. Well, and we're also we've also been using all three theaters for blood drives. So Bloodworks Northwest has been a partner of ours, and we've been doing these STG at Home series, and we're about to announce let's say a fall into holiday online streaming series with a bunch of great artists. But yeah, in terms of Anne, to dig a little bit back into the question of what else are we doing with patrons with disabilities, we are, in addition, like at the Neptune, we've struggled with not having a good restroom. So we found a way of putting a proper ADA restroom involved on the ground floor, I should say. And we've had a staff member go through, I don't know what to call it. Tori can maybe advise exactly in the chat box, but he's just become certified in better serving and reaching out to our patrons from the communities with disability. I should also say that I'm part of that community myself. My daughter is deaf, hard of hearing in one ear. So I've got a little bit of a personal experience with some of this, but boy, to have staff have that eagerness to dig in and get these certifications has been a real blessing. Yes, so here we go. One of Tori's great staff team members has gotten a 504 ADA certification. So, and I think a lot will come from that. We invest in our people to learn and create, more services and better connections. We're better we've got this vision of being the people's theater, right? And that indicates like we want to be, we want to be here for everybody. So how do you do that? You got to invest time and effort into it, and be intentional. And I suppose that's what we're trying to do. So and with the Broadway series, of course, we've been really thankful to work with you all and Disney. What do we call the series, Anne? We've done 2 shows, one Lion King, one
sensory-friendly performances for those with sensory issues, definitely. And those are a lot of hard work and so worth it for that community that so rarely gets to be in a theater with and experience Lion King or Frozen. So
that's right. So this is all part of where we want to continue to drive and grow, and yeah, looking out for people who don't necessarily feel all that included or welcomed all the time is going to be a theme that you'll see us continue to build on together.
Another question that came through earlier that kind of dovetails with a few other questions we've received is that there's a lot of talk about a recent interview in the New York Times with Dr. Fauci, where he basically said that patrons will not be expected to go back to the theater until the fall of 2021. Wondering if, Lauren, you want to kind of speak a little more to this about what people, like what is the reality?
I will, because there's a funny kind of backstory or interesting backstory to it, because the musical director of Wicked actually reached out to Dr. Fauci directly to kind of push him on this. And he clarified his statement, and he wanted everybody to know that he was speaking about a pre-COVID world when normal would come back. And in fact, he said, depending upon the level of infection in certain cities, states, or communities, he would see the reopening of theaters with careful attention, with varying degrees of masking, so wearing masks, and attention to other kind of public health and safety issues. So he could see a much more significant lessening of these kind of restrictive health measures, and as we kind of look to we'll call it a new normal, right, with masks. But funny that he actually, Anne, reached back and answered the musical director of Wicked. I mean, pretty spectacular.
That is pretty amazing that you can actually reach Dr. Fauci through Facebook. I love that. Okay, I think this is the final question for us. What shows are both of you most looking forward to coming on the road, either in New York City or to Seattle, as we look forward to our restart? Because I think one of the people who asked a question here earlier, it's not really a question so much as more of a, just what it would be so great to laugh to see the scenes of Book of Mormon or sing along to Defying Gravity, even at a home Zoom performance. And anybody who's asked questions and the question and answer that we wouldn't get to, I'll be reaching out to you to kind of answer some of those. But it made me think of, what are you looking forward to seeing once we are back in the theater together? What is exciting you? Because I really want to try to keep forward looking and positive and hopeful.
You want me to go first, or?
Go first, Lauren. You've seen probably more than Josh and I.
Well, listen, this is how I spend my life, right? Planning these things and making sure that we bring what the shows that everybody wants to see. So I know we work really hard. My personal favorites that I would love to share with Seattle and other cities too are To Kill a Mockingbird. The play and that adaptation is just brilliant. So I can't wait to get it out on the road, and then for audiences to see it, especially now. And I will tell you that I am in love with Moulin Rouge, and that experience that you feel in the theater and all of those people around you and the environment that's created, it's brilliant. So I have no doubt that we will be bringing these shows to Seattle. And, Josh, I know one of your favorites is Hadestown, and I'm right there with you too. So I'll give you that one. I'll leave that one to you.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm a musician. That's how I got myself into this crazy world. And Hadestown is just this gorgeous, gorgeous show that the way the music works, I don't know quite how to describe it, but it's very rare that we see a musical like Hadestown from Anais Mitchell, alternative style songwriting. I'm very excited for this to come. I'm also very excited for the band's visit, which I believe won Best Musical, correct?
So does Hadestown.
Yeah, a few years back. I love the band's music, the band's visit, for so many reasons. And when this first hit, I was like fearful, like, oh gosh, I hope some of these tours just don't blow up and suddenly our audiences don't get to have this experience because the cycle of our industry, right? Anyways, the band's visit, I think, has a very peaceful message as well. And it's the show where, on one hand, very little happens, and on the other hand, everything that's important in life happens.
I feel like it's just about communication, and right now, everything being Zoom and everything being conference calls and not being face-to-face, that shows theme of just how much we struggle to communicate that we love somebody, that we appreciate somebody, that we yearn to be with people. It will be especially resonant when it comes to Seattle in a time that we've just been deprived of that for so long. Yes, I would definitely say you guys have great choices, because Hadestown and Moulin Rouge, I'm looking forward to the shows I haven't seen on Broadway, like Jagged Little Pill, being a girl of the 90s. That's kind of my soundtrack to my youth. So I'm looking forward to that. And Tina, Tina.
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to those at some point. Well, it looks like we're just right at about our hour-long time. As I said before, I'll do my best to reach out to those of you who asked some questions that either we kind of addressed or maybe didn't 100% address, and get you some answers on those. We just didn't have enough time for everybody's, but thank you both so much for everything. I'll turn it over to Tori.
Yes, thank you so much for taking the time, Josh and Lauren. This was a really insightful conversation. And to our patrons, we will send out a link to either the full conversation or a part of it in the future. I just want to say thank you for your support and for your patience as we navigate this new world. Our industry is about bringing people together to create lifelong memories, and we look so forward to the time when we're able to gather again and make those memories. So in the meantime, thank you so much for your support.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you all.
Thank you, Lauren and Ann.
Bye.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye, y'all.